I had done some mock drafts, in the previous weeks, but prior to free agency being completed or conducted, it's kind of a useless endeavor. Still fun though. I decided to do a mock draft this afternoon and this evening after a lot of the free agency stuff has been sorted out. All the craziness, at least we would suspect, is over with. Still some pretty unique or interesting moves that have occurred on Saturday. Robert Woods going to the Titans for a six-round pick, next to nothing for a pretty talented receiver, a guy who blocks well. I mean, to play in that system with the Rams, Sean McVay's system, you have to be able to block as a receiver. And coming off an ACL injury, obviously there's a concern, but for a six-round pick, I mean, that's essentially a throwaway for a guy who has proven to be able to contribute at the NFL level. So what I ended up doing was doing a mock draft where I controlled pretty much every team, and and I did that, and I took time to address the needs of each team as I saw fit, but also based on my own thoughts. So there'll certainly be some inaccuracies there. I think one of these that I did, Nakobe Dean went to the Tennessee Titans, who of course have two pretty good inside linebackers. So it was like, why would they do that? And most Titans fans want them to go offense in the first round anyway. So I redid this draft a couple of times. One time, interestingly, I had the Lions drafting Aiden Hutchinson and David Ojabo, which is weird. Of course, they're both from in-state, but in any case, so there'll be some inaccuracies here or some hey, if 50% of these things happen the way that I drafted it out, I'd be satisfied. And if I can be somewhat entertaining at all to any of you guys that think this content is worthwhile, let me know in the comments section if it's if it was a waste of time and you couldn't make it through any length of time listening to me talk about a mock draft that's fictitious anyway. So anyway, what I ended up doing was I ended up trading back from 14 to 18, I believe, and with not the Chargers, whoever was at 18. I can't remember who it was. And then I also traded back into the second round to pick Jeremy Ruckert. So the three players you see here is who I was able to grab in rounds 1 and 2. I got Jermaine Johnson at 18. Roger McCreary, the corner from Auburn, who's pretty solid at 45. And then Jeremy Ruckert, the tight end from Ohio State, who I think would fit a lot of personnel needs for the Ravens. A lot of fans for the Ravens, rightfully so, have criticized Greg Roman's offense because Ricard being on the field meant that we would be really good at running the ball, and we were in most cases up until this year when the two running backs we had primarily were not that talented compared to Dobbins and Gus Edwards, obviously. So Ruckert is an excellent blocker, number one. 6'5", I think 255. Excellent blocker at Ohio State. I did a video on Twitter a couple of days ago. If you guys don't subscribe to my Twitter, go ahead and check it out. I'm putting some college video on Twitter that I can't put on YouTube. I did one on Ruckert. I was very impressed. I think I had 3 films of him. Excellent blocker. Executes reach blocks, stretch blocks, base blocks. Really good on split zone. I mean, he tries to hit home runs on the backside DN on split zone. He tries to knock the shit out of people. I really like him. Going downfield, blocks downfield. So go check out that video on Twitter. Maybe I'll put a link in the description here or in the first comment for this video. Really not sure where this is going to go. In a moment, I'm going to show you the first round, and I'm going to generally talk about all the picks that I showed, highlighting certain ones. I do think it's a very interesting draft in the first 40 picks or so. I think you've got Seattle has 3 of the first 41 picks, I believe. The Jets have 2 picks in the first round. The Giants have 2 picks in the first round. And the Eagles have 3 picks in the first round. And in fact, the Giants and Jets have 4 of the first 10. And then if you extrapolate that out to the Eagles, you have 7 picks among 3 teams out of the first 19. Very unique situation. And it's a very unique draft because you don't have that top-heavy quarterback element that you typically do have. The 2 top quarterbacks probably to be selected is Kenny Pickett and Malik Willis. To me, Malik Willis is the guy who has more talent, more arm talent, and Kenny Pickett is the safer choice. Less overall talent athletically, but a solid quarterback with good numbers in college. So we'll look at this from a Ravens perspective first, because I'm a Ravens fan. I traded back with the Saints, anticipating that the Saints would want a receiver, and they would think that the Eagles would probably get one. So they would try to jump and leapfrog the Eagles and the Chargers to go ahead and get a receiver. So I traded back with the Saints. Maybe not a realistic trade. I certainly don't think the Ravens are trading with the Chargers, and they're not going to. The Eagles aren't going to need to trade with anybody, and they're damn sure not trading with the Steelers or the Patriots. At least I wouldn't think so. So for the Ravens to trade back, to me it would either be 18 or 23 on down to 27. I don't think the Packers are moving unless they got a receiver they want to get at 14. So in that case, maybe the Packers are a trade partner for them. But let's talk about this 18 pick, Jermaine Johnson. I mean, he's as good as every edge defender. I grabbed Trayvon Walker for Houston at number 3. Probably a little bit high for him. But depending on who you look at, there's different people. I mean, look, Ahmad Gardner is top 5 in certain mock drafts. And I've been banging that drum for a while that he, is possibly the best talent in the draft completely out of all players, just to be real. Charles Cross, I've seen him fall to the Ravens in some drafts. I picked him for Carolina at 6 here. I probably went a little too heavy on receiver in round 1. There's a shit ton of them that I picked in round 1, as you can see if you check it out. I have the Packers drafting 2 of them, Treylon Burks and Jahan Dotson, who I personally think is a hell of a player. I have the Ravens passing on Tyler Linderbaum at center. And the Steelers picking a quarterback after they have, Mitch Trubisky and also 2 quarterbacks returning. So they're that's probably a stupid selection for me. They're probably not picking a quarterback there, being as they already have 3 on their roster. Have George Karlaftis going to the Patriots. I think that'd be an excellent place for him. I think he's a big physical guy if he'll fit into their system and do what they ask him to do. I think he could be a good fit there. Houston, I have getting Trayvon Walker and Daxton Hill. Daxton Hill at 13. The Vikings, I have grabbing Jordan Davis. I hope to hell that Jordan Davis doesn't fall to the Chargers at 17. I don't know what people are going to do with the Chargers defense if they get a monster like that. Zion Johnson, an offensive guard, a really talented offensive guard for Boston College, have him going to Washington. And then I got the 3 tackles going out of the first 6. Evan Neal, Ekwonu, and Cross going 3 of the first 6 choices. Malik Willis going to Seahawks. That seems like a natural fit to me, but who knows what will happen between now and then. But let's go back to Ravens-centric focus here. Look, Jermaine Johnson is a solid pick there at 14 or 18. If they trade back to 18, he's probably not. I would guess he's not there. I think the Chargers could go after an edge. I mean, they could go after. If Jermaine Johnson's there at 17, the Chargers stay there, I think they take him. For real, I do. I'm not as high on Devontae Wyatt as I am on Jordan Davis. Not saying that Devontae Wyatt's not a really quality defensive tackle. I think he is. And I think Jordan Davis is just special. I do. I have the Eagles drafting Derek Stingley and Devin Lloyd for their defense. And then Drake London, who seems really smooth from the limited film that I've seen on the offensive side. I think the Eagles are really going to define everything after 19. What they do is really going to define everything after 19. I don't think Malik Willis will be there, but on the crazy chance that they don't like Jalen Hurts and they go Malik Willis, like what the hell do they do now? They've wasted, to me, they've stockpiled those 3 first-round picks. They've got to use them on high-end talent that can impact their team across 2 or 3 positions. And so that's what I did, linebacker, corner, and receiver. And maybe it won't be those 3 positions, or probably won't be those 3 players, but I think they're going to define the rest of the first round, or at least the next 5 or 6 picks after 19, depending on what they go. But in any case, Jermaine Johnson falls to the Ravens at 18. I think he's a better player than that. I think he's a better football player than 3 of the guys that got drafted ahead of him. But 2 of those guys that I've got in my mind, I'm not going to name, are receivers. So, receivers are going to impact the game tremendously. I think Jermaine Johnson going to the Ravens will be unique. We have Bowser injured and out till November. Supposedly from the Achilles, from what I've heard. I haven't seen a story on that. I haven't really searched it up either. But if Bowser is truly out till November, whether it's early or mid or late November, it doesn't matter. We need somebody. But this would create an interesting situation whereby Johnson, Oweh, and Bowser would all three be under contract for a significant amount of time. So maybe that's not the answer. If Trayvon Walker was there, Trayvon Walker would be interesting because it looks like to me he could play edge or outside linebacker. I mean, a lot of you guys just call it edge. It's kind of a misnomer. You're either outside linebacker in a 3-4 or you're a DN in a 4-3. Yes, technically both of those guys are edge defenders, but different systems, different players. For example, George Karlaftis is to me a 4-3 DN. That's my opinion. He'd be more suited for that. Now that doesn't mean he can't play in the 3-4, but I would say he's a 4-3 DN with his hand in the ground. He looked better with his hand in the ground to me than he did in a 3-point stance. But if you've been paying any attention to this channel for any amount of time, you know I contend that it doesn't matter whether you're 3-4 or 4-3. Against 11 personnel, you're going to be in a 4-2 nickel anyway. And whether you're a 4-3 D end or a 3-4 outside backer, you're going to be playing on the quote edge, in those nickel situations. That's what football's going to. Football's going to 11 personnel primarily. So I feel like the wide receiver heavy component in this first round that I did is maybe a little unrealistic. And there was a couple of guys that are omitted from this first round that you'll see in the second round. I'm basically, look, I'm doing this to try to give you some of my thoughts on the draft. I got the Jets going heavy after Kyle Hamilton and Ahmad Gardner. If they both were there at those two slots, to me, just my eyes watching them, I would think that in terms of where they should be drafted, it will be flip-flop. I think Ahmad Gardner is as good as any player in the draft and can impact the game immediately with his coverage skills. That's just what I think. But in any case, I got the Jets going heavy after DBs here, really upgrading their secondary and their coverage component. I've got the Giants somehow getting Ekwonu, which, he could be the first pick, I guess. Evan Neal looks like a monster to me. From the film that I've watched of Alabama against Georgia, he was really, really, really freak athlete for the size that he has. Charles Cross falling to the Panthers. So the three tackles going early, and no other offensive tackle being taken until late first round, where I've got Trevor Penning and Bernard Rahman going to Miami and the Bengals. Bengals are clearly going to be trying to upgrade their offensive line. Excuse me, I omitted Tyler Smith there. I got him going to Dallas at 24. Certainly could fit in with what they're trying to do there. They've got to get rid of their left tackle at some point. Had a hell of a career, but he's clearly up in age now and losing some steam. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section of what I did here. Clearly the Ravens, could sit at 14. They might move up. They could move up to 10. 10 would be a move. To me, 10 would be a partner for them to move up. They're not moving up to 9 or 8. And I don't think anybody in the top 7 is trading with the Ravens to move back to 14. I think the first opportunity for them to move up is 10. And if they wanted to do something crazy, they could move up to 4, but I don't see the value in moving up to 4. To me, if the Ravens want to ensure they're going to get Ahmad Gardner, and I think that's the guy that they would be moving up for, it would be 10. And that would only be if he's not drafted by Atlanta or Seattle. And I think they'd have to wait until after Seattle picks and then try to initiate that trade. They may contact the Jets first, prior to, but point being, they're not going to be a trade partner with Seattle to get Ahmad Gardner, and they're not going to be a trade partner with anybody in the top 8, if you ask me, to try to get Gardner, and he might be gone anyway. Daxton Hill is another one that maybe is a reach. Some people got him mid-20s. I think he's a hell of a football player. Great coverage skills, great tackler, unbelievable athlete. You can look at his measurables, his speed, and such. Unreal athlete, even coming out of high school. Derek Stingley going to the Eagles because Ahmad Gardner's off the board. I think Gardner projects as a more impactful player immediately, but Stingley's a playmaker. Sounds kind of crazy, but he's a playmaker. He has six interceptions as a freshman. Didn't have any as a sophomore or a junior, or maybe he had one as a sophomore, but I think he only played 3 games as a junior, so it's not like there's really a lot of film of him. Devin Lloyd, first inside linebacker off the board. Nakobe Dean going as the second inside linebacker off the board as the last pick in the first round, and him and Aiden Hutchinson being the two picks for the Lions on the defensive side in the first round. And who knows if that'll hold up if they do go defense. The Chiefs trying to shore up some of their defensive deficiencies, by drafting Elam, the corner out of Florida. Let's move to round 2. And I'd like to see what you guys think of some of this. Kenyon Green falling to the first pick of round 2 seems kind of crazy. I mean, that's a guy who the Ravens could draft him at 14, depending on how everything falls prior to that. So kind of that's maybe a little unrealistic. And then when you look over at 45, let's jump to the Ravens stuff. When you look over at 45, that's where I've got the Ravens standing pat and taking McCreary. And then I've got him trading back in to 55 to get Jeremy Ruckert. I think that Ruckert would allow the Ravens to utilize, let's be honest, Mark Andrews is not a tight end from the standpoint of being used in the blocking scheme at the point of attack often. He's not. He's a receiving tight end. Maybe not as heavily weighted towards receiving as Travis Kelce, but he's certainly not as balanced as George Kittle. George Kittle is a great blocker, not just a good blocker, a great blocker, and a receiver. But Kittle's, conversely, is not as good a receiver as Andrews and Kelce. I have us drafting Jeremy Ruckert to be like that Nick Boyle type role if Boyle is, depending on what the situation is with him. To me, he certainly didn't look healthy last year. Maybe you would say that if you're going to trade back, I think I had us given up a third in 2023, a fourth in this year's draft, one of them fourths. Of course, we got half a dozen of them or something. And then I think I had us giving up a fifth as well to get back in at 55. And I don't even remember who the trade was with. But I've got the Patriots going one player, one draft pick before that, taking Brisker, the safety, because I didn't think the Patriots would need a tight end. And so to me, under this scenario, that's when the Ravens would try to go ahead and jump in and get Ruckert. I think Ruckert is a spectacular player. Got a run on edge players in this second round, starting at 38 with Mafe from Minnesota, and then Ojabo going to the Colts. Of course, he's got to, presumably be out for the whole year. Sam Williams from Mississippi. I've really only seen 2 games of him, so I can't really comment a ton on him. Ebekete, who I've made a couple of Twitter videos about, and then Thomas and Sanders. Maybe those 2 guys are drafted a little earlier than they will be. And again, I'm the person who made all these picks, so if you can criticize me. Jameson Williams and Ojabo, 2 guys who presumably may not play this year, going early second round. So I find it interesting, though. I read something that teams may try to draft Williams and Ojabo in the first round so they could get that extra year, being as they're going to lose the first year, possibly, for injury. So I don't know what team's perspective is going to be on that, but, I would understand that thought process. So getting to the Ravens stuff, McCreary, very solid, if you ask me. If Pickens was there, do the Ravens draft Pickens or McCreary? I don't know. I really don't know. What I've got drafted here is 2 defensive players and 1 offensive player. I think there is some credence and some justification for a lot of Ravens fans saying, hey, yes, we have some good offensive weapons, but there wouldn't be anything wrong with getting a George Pickens. There wouldn't be anything wrong with getting a Jahan Dotson if he was around somewhere for us to grab him. Certainly, I don't think the Ravens are taking him at 14. I don't have the Ravens taking any other edge defenders besides Jermaine Johnson, because we do have so much tied up in Oweh and Bowser. I think Bowser has one of the most team-friendly contracts for a Pro Bowl, All-Pro type guy, and you may disagree. If you disagree with me that Bowser is a top 8, he played as a top 8, top 10 edge guy in the NFL this year. That's a fact. But if you disagree with me, that's no problem. But you certainly cannot say that he's anything below like 12 or 14. I mean, come on. Like look at the impact that he had. He can cover people man to man. Look at the Bears game. The last 2 plays of the Bears game, he covered a receiver and a tight end man to man. Excuse me, I'm sorry, not the Bears game, the Browns game that we won. He ended the Bears game with a sack. He had 2.5 sacks in that game, 3 sacks in that game, excuse me, but one of them didn't count because called back for a penalty on Marlon Humphrey. He had multiple games where he had 6, 7 tackles and 2 tackles for loss. Bowser is a stud at this point. So I didn't tie up any other assets on an edge player through the 2 rounds, and I wouldn't have even if I got to 3 and 4, unless somebody was there at 4, that shouldn't be there. So I did have a number of tackles and offensive linemen in the first round, but not many in the second round. You can see I got Kenyon Green as a guard going to Jacksonville, like I said. I got Darian Kennard, and he might not fall this far, going to the Steelers. Faalele from Minnesota going to the Bears early. It will be interesting for the Ravens if he's there. Do they take him? Or Kennard, do they take him at 45? And to me, that's where the whole situation, to be honest with you, where we sign a guy at OLB or edge defender, and then he decides not to come to sign. If that was settled, then we wouldn't be drafting Jermaine Johnson at 14 or 18. You know what I mean? We'd be addressing tackle or DB or something else. So that's where I think the Ravens had the right strategy. For real, I do. I think they had the right strategy by signing him. Even though there was, back trouble last year. I did a video on Twitter last week showing that he still played well, against the 49ers in a playoff game. I think he had a sack. I know he only played like 19 snaps. But in any case, that's no longer the focus. So you might have to go edge defender at 14. You damn sure will go edge at 14 if Jermaine Johnson's there. And if Faalele or Kennard is there at 45, maybe the Ravens take them at 45. To me, a lot depends on what happens with Tavon Young. I have not seen him sign with anyone yet. He would be the guy that I think would settle the whole defense down and put everybody in the slot they should be in. I really, really think that Tavon Young, if he was willing and the Ravens wanted him back, would be something that would make everything fit defensively. And then we could focus on D-tackle, edge, outside linebacker, and maybe an inside linebacker. But to me, an inside linebacker is going to be a 4th round pick at earliest. Excuse me. I don't think there's going to be anyone picked in the 3rd round for the Ravens at inside linebacker. I have us trading back into the 2nd round, and I also have us passing up on another guy that I should have mentioned. There's Travis Jones from UConn. A lot of guys are really high on him, and I am too. I haven't put out a video on him, but passing up on him twice in my scenario to grab McCreary at 45 and Ruckert at 55. So, some big guys on the O-line and D-line I have the Ravens passing on. I think the signing of Moses was huge. Unfortunately, we did not retain Bozeman, so center might need to be addressed as well. I didn't deal with that in the first 2 rounds here. You guys let me know what you think of this type of video. I'd like to do maybe one more of these before the draft. Hey, it'd be wonderful if we made out with this kind of talent. With 3, I'd like to see the Ravens get 3 players out of rounds 1 and 2. You guys let me know what you think of that thought. Whether it's these 3 guys or not, I'd like to see the Ravens get 3 players out of rounds 1 and 2. 3 talents that are potential first-round guys or fringe first-round guys like McCreary. Now, I don't think Ruckert is a fringe first-round guy, but I'm going to tell you, watch the film. I'll put a link to the Twitter video in the description. You watch it and you tell me what you see. He beats not Jahan Dotson. He beats Jaquan Brisker twice. One time Jaquan Brisker got called for pass interference on him. Another time he caught like an out route where he turned Brisker around. He got Brisker to open his hips a little bit. He didn't turn him around, and then he beat him on an out route to the right sideline. He beat an outside linebacker, number 23, who's a pretty damn good player, up the left seam against Penn State. Ruckert, I think, is an underrated player. Really, really underrated player. There are some good tight ends in this draft. Don't get me wrong, and I maybe had a couple of guys drafted too late at the tight end slot. In any case, this was fun for me to do. I hope you guys got something out of the video. I would love to do something like this with other people in in the Discord that I've created, which is for my patrons. Um, I messaged some people and asked if they want to do it. Nope, didn't get any takers, so I just went ahead and did this myself. But I'd like to do this with a group of other people, whereby there's 3, 4, 5, 6 people that are drafting, for like maybe one person per division. I thought that'd be interesting. I have never really been this into the draft, but I never really was, I was never operating a YouTube channel to try to make revenue and put out content that people thought was hopefully enjoyable. So give me some feedback on the content, number one. Number two, give me some feedback if you want to participate in something like that, a mock draft where we're basically drafting for the entire league, because it was pretty fun for me to do. Appreciate you guys checking out the video if you listened this long.